Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Navigating the Threat Landscape, Heat Map Insights via MITRE ATT&CK. I'm Kainaz Baria, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen-only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Now about our speaker, Mark Mackensen. Mark Mackensen brings over a decade of cybersecurity expertise with a specific focus on cyber threat intelligence, that is CTI, and threat hunting. Currently leading Paylocity's CTI and threat hunting programs, Mark has been pivotal in developing these initiatives from inception to operational maturity. This includes crafting tailored methodologies, frameworks, and protocols that enhance incident response capabilities and forfeit overall security posture prior to Paylocity. Mark managed a global team of threat intelligence analysis at General Dynamic Information Technology for the Department of Defense. There, he focused on leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework, improving intelligence sharing, and guiding a team through comprehensive threat intelligence cycles, ultimately delivering actionable intelligence critical for security operations. Mark's leadership extended to managing the West Coast Threat Intelligence Team, emphasizing operational excellence and strategic mentorship. Without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to you, Mark.
Morning, and thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and welcome to the webinar. Especially thank you to some of the attendees that are staying up late. I know in some places it's 8:30 p.m. I think where you're attending, so I appreciate that. Today's webinar is Navigating the Threat Landscape, Heat Map Insights via MITRE ATT&CK. My name is Mark Mackensen, and I'm excited to guide you through a practical look at leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework to help prioritize threats and align your defensive strategies at your organization. This session is hosted by EC Council, and again, I appreciate you all taking time to join me here. So, as she said, this is a little bit about myself. I'm the lead Threat Intelligence Analyst at Paylocity. I was hired to build the threat intelligence program from the ground up here, and in the beginning, it was just me. I was the only Intel analyst with the company. However, in the past 2 years that I've been here, we've expanded, and now there's a team of us working. Prior to this, I worked for General Dynamics as a Department of Defense contractor, and I've been working in cybersecurity for over 10 years now. I hold both the EC Council Certified Threat Intelligence Analyst certification, as well as the Certified Information Security Manager certification from ISACA. So let's talk about why we're here today. One of the things that all organizations of all sizes struggle with is figuring out which threats matter the most in a constantly shifting threat landscape. And the solution that we'll explore today involves creating actionable heat maps using the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And by focusing on these tactics, techniques, and procedures, commonly called TTPs, we can more effectively allocate our limited resources in each department that each company has to the threats that pose the highest risk. And our ultimate goal is to translate these insights into concrete improvements in our security posture. So this webinar targets IT professionals, security leaders, and threat intelligence analysts, all who want a more structured method to identify and score relevant threats within their personal environments. By the end of our time together, hopefully you'll see how to understand the MITRE ATT&CK basics and the framework for anyone who may not be familiar, generate TTP heat maps, and score and prioritize a defensive posture. And we'll walk through a live demonstration to make sure that these steps are as clear and practical as possible. The agenda for today, again, we're going to go over the basics of MITRE ATT&CK. as well as Attack Navigator for those who aren't familiar with it. And then I'll guide you through the step-by-step process of creating heat maps, including a few scripts and tools that I've developed over the years to make things a little bit easier. What I'm going to show you today can all be done manually, but it's a bit more tedious that way, and there's some shortcuts that we can take. So after we generate a heat map, we'll interpret those results and map them back to practical defensive measures. And finally, we'll demonstrate the scoring spreadsheet and open the floor for any questions. So with that, let's begin by laying out the basics. So what is MITRE ATT&CK? MITRE ATT&CK is an open framework that was created by MITRE to classify and describe the tactics, techniques, and procedures, again, TTPs, used by threat actors across the attack life cycle. ATT&CK helps us to understand how adversaries operate in the real world by breaking down each phase of an attack into specific observable behaviors. This provides a common language for us to use, and it's valuable because it lets us map our own controls, detections, and responses to known threat actor activities. And by doing so, we can quickly identify gaps and pinpoint which techniques might be slipping through our defenses. The best analogy that I've seen in this area is someone talking about robbing a bank. If you think of threat actors as a bank robber, what MITRE ATT&CK can help do, and the framework that it provides, this is the attack matrix, is kind of the modus operandi of a bank robber. You know, some bank robbers, they're gonna exploit a feature in the alarm system, or they're gonna walk straight up to the teller and say, hey, give me the money. Some of them are gonna be an inside job, maybe they got hired there. Every bank robber has a different set of tactics that they use to achieve their goals. And so the MITRE ATT&CK matrix is kind of a form of that. It is a way to identify every tactic that we see attackers use to achieve a specific objectives. And so you can see it moves from left to right here across the matrix, starting with reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, etc. And this is how they move through the intrusion life cycle. A simple example that everyone will likely know is under initial access is phishing. Phishing is an example of how an attacker might gain initial access to your systems. Okay, so now that we've reviewed kind of the basics, very basics of the attack matrix, let's talk about Attack Navigator. Attack Navigator is a tool that was created by MITRE in conjunction with the attack matrix. It's a free open source web-based application that allows you to interact with the MITRE attack matrix. And it allows you to create layers to view the matrix. And these layers can highlight any techniques that apply to your environment, defensive measures in place, known threat group associations, etc. And the Navigator's key strength is making it easy to spot coverage gaps or annotate each technique in the organization, helping you focus your resources on the most relevant risks. I know that this slide probably isn't the most helpful right now if you're not familiar with MITRE ATT&CK or MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, but we'll start the live presentation and it'll make some sense. Okay, so we're going to move to the live demonstration of Attack Navigator. So this is, again, the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. This is just an example of it. And this is the Attack Navigator. There are 3 sections here that we're going to focus on: create new layer, open existing layer, and create layer from other layers. So we're going to start with the first one, create new layer. And if we go to enterprise attack, there's a couple options here. The most important one is version is attack of MITRE ATT&CK is version 16. When you're combining layers, which we'll talk about later, it's very important that all of them have the same version. You can't combine layers from different versions. So just make sure to remember that when you're creating it. So this may look familiar. We just looked at it with the attack matrix. This is an interactive version of the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. You can select each individual tactic if you'd like. You can select them in bulk by pressing Control and clicking on it. You can see some of them highlight. The most common way to select things is up here on the right is selection controls, and there's a little microscope that says search and multi-select. We're going to click on that today. And where we're going to start is you can see down here there's different methods for selecting TTPs based on threat groups, software, mitigations, etc. Or you can scroll down and select each technique right here. We're going to start with search. So let's say that you are aware of a threat actor that is targeting your industry. Say you work in financial services and you know that the Turla group, a threat actor, is targeting your industry. So we can go up here and type in Turla, and down here in threat groups, it's narrowed it down for us. And here we have Turla. Automatically, just hovering over it, it highlights the TTPs that MITRE has identified with the Turla group. Going back to the bank robber analogy, essentially this is intel that MITRE has provided us saying, hey, the Turla group, this is how they break into a bank. This is the techniques that they use. You know, do they exploit the alarm system? Do they have someone on the inside, etc.? So this is what MITRE has identified the Turla group uses for the intrusion process. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move over to the select option, and you can hopefully see that some of them have highlighted when that happens. Next, we're going to go to technique controls, and we're going to move over to the scoring section. We're going to go down here and give it a score of 1. Immediately you can see that it highlights each of the TTPs a certain color. So now we have our first layer of Attack Navigator. The next step would be creating another layer. Just going to do it again. And let's say we also know that the Lazarus group is somebody who also targets our organization in financial services. So we can go here, start typing Lazarus group, and scroll down. Here we go, Lazarus group. We're going to do the same process, select it, go to scoring, give it a score of 1. And then finally, we'll do it one more time. Let's say we also know that APT 29 is a threat group that we know also targets our industry. So again, select them, give them a score. Here we go. So what can we do with this information? What's the whole point of me doing this, right? These are the different TTPs from each of these 3 different threat actors that have been identified from MITRE. So we're going to move on to the next step in this, which is creating layers from other layers. So as soon as I click that, you can see right here, it labels each layer that we have, A, B, and C. And what we can do in this scoring expression is combine the 3 layers into one layer. It's already been done for us here, A plus B plus C. Just something to remember, you can only combine layers with the same version. Okay? Scroll down, we're going to create the layer, and now we have all 3 of the layers on top of each other. By default, it goes from red to green. I think that's a little counterintuitive. If you click on layer controls and go to the painter palette for color setup, you can click presets and go to green to red. To me, that's a little more natural for when it overlaps. But essentially what this does, this is a very basic version of a heat map showing all 3 of these threat actors where they overlap. Okay, so if you look at any of the green ones, it has a score of 1, the yellow ones have a score of 2, and the red ones have a score of 3. And so what this can show is if you're concerned that all 3 of these threat actors are targeting your industry or your company, now you're able to focus on which ones overlap and where to prioritize your resources. You can look at this and see all 3 of these threat actors use process discovery. All 3 of them use system information discovery or data from local system. And so going back to the bank analogy, if you see that all 3 bank robbers that you're concerned about are exploiting the alarm system, then it might help you to know that so that you can improve or allocate resources into your alarm system, because that's what they're all using to exploit your flaws in the bank. So what if you wanted to do it with more than 3, right? You can also open existing layers, and so you can upload it from a local resource. If you have a lot of layers, it might look something like this. One of the problems with Attack Navigator, unfortunately, is that it doesn't provide an easy way to pull this TTP information from any other resources. So I know myself, and likely a lot of you, have intel providers that share TTPs of threat actors with you as part of their offerings. So maybe you have CrowdStrike, or maybe you have Anomaly, or Mandiant, or Flashpoint, or Intel 471, any of these intel providers. A lot of them offer TTP information on threat actors as part of their intel providing. And again, this is the information about the bank robbers, right? They all have information about the bank robbers and the process that they use. Now, MITRE gives this away for free, and that's very useful. But sometimes maybe you want more curated information. Well, a lot of times you're able to export that information as a CSV file, but it's very rare that they will be able to export it in the format that you can upload into Attack Navigator. The format for that is a JSON file, and it looks a little bit like this. This is the raw data that builds up what it looks like in Attack Navigator. And so something that you could do this manually, right? So you could go into Anomaly and you could look at a threat actor and you could say, hey, they do this and they do this and they do this, and you could manually create a heat map, 1 layer for 1 threat actor if you wanted to. The workaround that I've come up with is this is my GitHub, and I'm happy to share this with anybody. It's just my first and last name with GitHub right here. I can drop that in the chat and share it via EC Council. But on this page, I created a script to help expedite that process. Okay, this is the script right here. What it does is it converts a CSV file. So let's say this is a CSV from one of those threat actors. This is from Turla Group. Okay, these are all the TTPs that we have identified from our intel provider as being associated with Turla Group, and we want to convert that into an Attack Navigator layer. So we have the CSV here, and we can run the script that I've created. I will just double click it over here on the attack layer builder. And it's going to bring up a dialog window. It's going to ask which version that we're using, because remember, we can only use versions that are the same to combine them. I'm just going to press enter because it defaults to the most recent version. You can enter the technique IDs manually. You could input each of these technique IDs on their own if you would like, but obviously the faster version is to upload a CSV file. So I'm going to press 1. That opens a dialog box. And here we can select the CSV for it to convert it into the correct format. It's going to ask for a score for techniques. We're going to give that a 1 as well. And here you can see it's converting it and asking you to save it. So I already have it saved. It's in here as Turla Group. But what it does is it's going to output a file that we can then open an existing layer and upload it from our computer. So you can see here's the Turla Group JSON file. This is the one that I just converted. So the question is, why would you want to do all this? Again, this is to help utilize your tools that you're paying for and the intel that you're being provided into Attack Navigator. It seems like probably a little bit of a lengthy process to do, but there is a reason for it. And that reason is this is a very simple heat map. This is 4 threat actors just from MITRE ATT&CK. But what if there are more than 4 threat actors that you're concerned about? What if there are more than 4 bank robbers that are targeting your bank? And what if CrowdStrike says the bank robbers do this, and Anomaly says these bank robbers do this, and Mandiant says this? You have all this intel. What if you could combine all of it in one place, all of the TTPs for all the bank robbers in one place? Well, that might look something like this. This is an example of 10 different threat actors from 3 to 4 different sources for each threat actor, all combined on one heat map. So it's around 36, I believe, 32 sources for all of these threat actors and heat maps, or TTPs. So using this, again, this provides a view of where you should focus your resources. If we're looking at all the bank robbers, we can see that almost all of them use data from local system, or they exploit public-facing applications, or valid accounts, or file and directory discovery. So again, this can help you allocate your resources that you have available into what bank robbers are exploiting the most. Now there's another step to this, and it's kind of the next step, which is so what, right? This provides you some of the information. This provides you information on, where the threat actors in your industry, what they might be targeting. But what can you do with that information? So when we go to layer controls here, there are 2 ways that we can export this information. The first is as a single layer JSON. Again, that looks like this. It just exports all of it into raw data. Or you can export a single layer as an Excel spreadsheet. The problem with both of these export options is it's not exactly user-friendly. So if I look at exporting it as an Excel spreadsheet, it looks somewhat like this. This unfortunately doesn't provide you with the information when it comes to scoring. You can see the color difference, but it doesn't provide you with the raw data. And when you export it as a JSON, it looks like this. So again, not entirely useful. So what I had to end up doing was create another script that if you export it as a JSON file, you can then convert it to a CSV file, back to a CSV file. And I can show you what that looks like. So we will run the attack layer deconstruction script. It pops up with another dialog box. It wants us to select a JSON file that we exported. Let's say we exported one from Attack Navigator. We can open that up, and then it wants us to save it. It'll save it as all aggregated CSV. That's one that I did earlier. So then when it exports it, it ends up looking like this. So this is the information that we just had on the Attack Navigator. You can see that T1005 with a score of 32. If we go back and look at the Attack Navigator, data from local system, there's a score of 32. and it's T1005. So this is just an export of the raw data into a CSV file. Now, the reason that we're doing that is, again, because if we export it as Excel, it doesn't give us the raw data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the information from the CSV file here. We're going to take this score, all of these scores, and we're going to copy and paste it into this Excel file. As a note for everybody, this Excel file is also available on my GitHub. It's right here, Heatmap Insights, and that will provide you with a structure for doing this on your own if you want to in your organization. So we've exported all the scores here from a heat map that we created, and now we're going to export all of the technique IDs. We're going to just copy and paste them in there. And you can see that it auto-populates all the technique names, tactic names, and URLs. This is something that I created just to make it a little easier. Again, it's in the Excel spreadsheet on my GitHub, but it automatically does that for you so that you can kind of keep track of all this information. So first sheet here is the heat map. That's just for reference. The second one is the raw data from the heat map we created. Again, all of the bank robbers' tactics about how they break in. This is the most popular in descending order. Now we're going to move over to the TTP analysis slide or a spreadsheet. So this will look familiar. This is literally just a copy and paste from the TTP info section. And when I did that, we're going to now score our security posture against all of these TTPs. So we have information about how the bank robbers break into the bank, but what we also need to do is evaluate our own security posture against these tactics. So let's say that this first one is them exploiting the alarm system. Well, maybe we don't need to really be worried about that because at our bank, we're really secure in our alarm system. We have the best, the most expensive alarm system out there. It's impossible to break into, so we're not really worried about it. So if that's the way that most bank robbers are breaking into the bank, it's not really a concern for us. Maybe we should focus our resources elsewhere. So what I've done is create this spreadsheet with 4 separate categories of logging, prevention, detection, and response. And you can go through and score where you believe your organization's security posture falls in regards to this specific category for this specific TTP. So if we go back to MITRE's website and we select one of these, any one of their techniques, you can see the definition of it, and you can scroll down and see there's some mitigations, here are detection rules. So this is a resource to help you score this for your organization. When you do this, this involves getting together your security engineers, your security architecture, your detection engineers, your offensive security, red team, purple team, getting together all of these personnel to help contribute to this list. I'm not going to be the expert on all of these systems and on all of these TTPs and our defenses against them. But you get them all in a meeting and you start going through it and you start scoring each of these. I also have on my GitHub a document here for the scoring rubric that I've created. This is to help provide a guideline for how to score each of these. It should be a very quick process. It should be a very, if you're talking to your security engineering team, it should be quick to be able to say, hey, do we have no logging captured for this? Or do we have some basic logging, but there's some gaps in visibility? This provides, or it should be, a relatively quick kind of gut check with the teams in your organization to be able to provide a score for each of these TTPs. And you can just use this as reference at any time if you're not really sure. But when you go through and you score each of these, eventually you come up with an overall score. This is just an average of these 4 scores. You can see if I change this score to 3 and this score to 3, this score, the overall score starts changing. So this is the overall category. And next we have the risk category. The risk category is a combination of the overall score, your security posture, and how you believe you defend against it, combined with the score of the likelihood of the threat actors exploiting this specific TTP. So going back to the bank robber analogy, if this score is how often the bank robbers use it and exploit it, and this is our security posture, the overall column, the risk is what's left over. If we believe that threat actors, they're exploiting this one specifically a lot, but we have a really strong security posture in exploiting alarms. We have the best alarm out there. Our risk is going to be a little different. It's going to be mitigated because of our security posture. What's left over on these next 2 columns is external TTP. So part of the challenge that I encountered in doing this analysis for an organization is there are certain TTPs that fall outside of enterprise control. So when you look at the furthest left on the enterprise attack matrix for reconnaissance and resource development, typically those TTPs fall outside of what you are able to do as an organization. So if you look at certain TTPs like acquire infrastructure or develop capabilities, if we look at develop capabilities, there's not much that you can do as a company if the bad guys are developing malware. There's just not much you can do. If they're going to create malware, they're going to create malware. Same goes with acquiring infrastructure. If they're acquiring a new domain, how can you really prevent that, right? And same with reconnaissance. So either one of these, reconnaissance or resource development, they typically fall outside of enterprise control. And you can even see that when you click on that information and go down to mitigations, it says outside the scope of enterprise defenses and controls. The reason that I'm pointing this out is because on this spreadsheet, if it's an external TTP, what I've done is create a reduction in score, and that's what the weighted score is. So if you scroll down to one that says yes, right here, gathering victim identity, this is something that falls outside of your control to a reasonable response. And so what it does in the weighted score category is it reduces it by 25%. It takes your initial risk and reduces it. You can see it goes from 4.9 to 3.7 because it doesn't necessarily reflect a poor security posture, and it's not really where you should be focusing your resources because, again, it falls outside of your enterprise control. So after all of this work, this provides us with the weighted score, okay? So what you're gonna do from there is you select all of this information, scroll down. You'll notice that I stopped at 10 here. The reason for that is we're trying to allocate our resources most appropriately, and eventually it reaches a point where it's kind of arbitrary to continue to evaluate your security posture against it. If this is something that bank robbers aren't really using, if there's a bank robber out there his technique is to use a battering ram to just drive in through your bank, but he's the only one who does that, you probably don't need to spend money reinforcing your bank against the battering ram. That's a poor use of resource allocation. Okay, so eventually you're just going to stop. In this example, I stopped at number 10 just because it's less likely that it's going to be used. So we're going to take this information, we're going to copy it, and we're going to move over to scoring and improvements. It's just a duplicate of the slide or of the same sheet. It's just a different one that we're going to sort, and you'll see why. So if I go here and I copy and paste it, which has already been done, what we're going to do next is select all of these columns. We're going to go to sort and filter, and we're going to do custom sort. In custom sort, we're going to select by weighted score, this category right here. We're going to do cell values, and we're going to do largest to smallest. And you can see what that did is it sorted all of these TTPs based on our weighted score from highest to lowest. So now this spreadsheet is a reflection of where we should allocate our resources for this imaginary company. Okay, we have the most likely TTPs that are being exploited in our industry. We say the bank robbers, they do these things the most, and then we've looked at how our bank defends against them, and now we can see where we need to focus our resources. These TTPs are the ones that we should be most concerned about based on the combination of how frequently the threat actors exploit this and what our security posture is against it. And this is changing. This is something that changes often, right? You can use this information and say, hey, you know what? We need to improve our logging for these things. But as that happens, you can change the scores, and then you can resort, and these weighted scores are going to change. But now we have information that we can go off of to see where we should be spending our time, our money, putting our people, buying new tools, etc. Also on this spreadsheet, just as like a little bit of information, I put in here some of the improvement actions that you can do when you're suggesting this information to leadership. Configuration improvement, a toggle change. Sometimes it's as easy as turning something on or off. You know, when you're looking at the evaluation of this TTP, maybe all you have to do is talk to security engineering, and they say, hey, there's this thing that we don't turn on. We didn't really do it before, but maybe we should. Okay. But these are some suggestions, new tools, communicated change, etc. Just for information for people on potentially what you could do. So going back to our presentation, we have the heat map, we have the spreadsheet. What can you do with it? How to operationalize it? Okay, we have a clear heat map with quantitative scores and real value on how to integrate this data across the organization. So ways that you can use this is presenting this weighted list of high-risk TTPs backed by this scoring system provides your executive leadership with clear justification for budget allocation, tools, investments, maybe even new hires, rather than vague, ambiguous cyber threats. You can show exactly which techniques are most pressing and why. For security architecture, engineers and architects, they can pinpoint which controls, logging mechanisms, or detection tools need upgrades. For instance, if there's a TTP with a really high weighted risk score, but low prevention coverage, it might be prioritized. Moving on to purple and red team exercises, you can test the top ranked TTPs and ensure that the simulated attacks align with the real threat landscape. Sometimes, red teams or purple teams, they are, where are they getting these ideas from? So why are they choosing to test against this? Well, with this heat map, you can see these are the top TTPs in the industry. Maybe we should be testing from the top down. And then you can use the blue team to validate whether their logging, detection, and response capabilities are up to snuff. And finally, with incident response and threat hunting, by highlighting the specific TTPs that your organization is weakest against, the responders can develop tailored playbooks for each of those TTPs. And threat hunting teams can proactively search for traces of those techniques in your environment to hopefully close the gap before an actual incident. So overall, these insights let every stakeholder, whether you're an executive, an engineer, or an analyst, concentrate on what truly matters rather than a gut feeling This is data-driven decision making, and it maximizes both the effectiveness and the efficiency of your security efforts. So, summary of the key takeaways. I know I went through this very quickly. It's being recorded by EC Council, so hopefully, if you need to, you can rewatch this on their YouTube channel as many times as you need to. But some of the key takeaways is by mapping these threats with Navigator, you can turn abstract TTPs, the intel that you're paying for, into actionable insights. You can export and deconstruct that layer to highlight your strongest and weakest controls. And then you can prioritize the remediation for the ones with the highest scores and the greatest potential impact. Finally, I'd like to just note when it comes to the development of these scripts, I reached out to MITRE themselves because I thought that this might exist already. I thought that these scripts, I couldn't have been the first one to do this, but I was, I guess. And so I reached out to them and shared these scripts that I created on the GitHub with them, and they said the first thing that came to mind is it's a way better experience than their own functionality for it. They have one, but it's clunky. It doesn't really work well. It's not user intuitive. So he shared it with their software development team, the person at MITRE that I contacted. Hopefully this is something that maybe they can add to Attack Navigator themselves. And I'm not sure what the future is for it, but it's somewhat endorsed by MITRE themselves. They at least understand the value of it. So I want to thank everybody for participating today. That's the end of my presentation. Again, EC Council will be posting this on YouTube. If anything that I went over was too quick or confusing, you can always reach out to me. Again, my GitHub is just my first and last name, so it should be easy enough to find. And that has all of the resources on there. And like I said, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I've done this for a couple companies. I've consulted for them. If you're looking for something like this to be done, feel free to reach out to me. Or if you just have any questions, I'm happy to help. I think that this is one of the best ways to improve an organization's security posture against the most pressing threats for your industry. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for delivering such an insightful and informative session. We found the webinar very engaging and hope it was valuable for you as well. So before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is synced with EC Council's CTIA program. EC Council's CTIA maps to many roles in the industry like Threat Intelligence Analyst, Threat Analysis and Reporting, Vulnerability Management and Threat Intelligence Engineering, etc. Anyone with a CTIA certification is eligible for 9,000 plus job vacancies globally with an average salary of $1,324 per annum. If you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll that is going to be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we'll reach out to you. So Mark, should we proceed with our question and answers?
Yep.
The first one is, how did you decide for the security number that you gave to any layer?
The security number, are you referring to, I imagine the security number here? It's based just on a scale of 1 to 4. And the scoring rubric here should help you provide where you think your security posture best aligns. So whether you have low prevention, low confidence in detection or response, this should hopefully provide a guideline, a rubric for you and your team to decide what score it should be.
Thank you. We move on to the next one. Can you share the tool name which you used?
Yeah, so let's see, there's a couple tools. The best resource for all of that is just going to be on my GitHub. The script for it, for building the attack layer, is right here. The tool to deconstruct the layer and export it is the deconstruction Python script. The Heatmap Insights Excel spreadsheet, that's this one with the analysis and the scoring and improvements. And then finally the scoring rubric, which is that Word document that you saw, that's also located on the GitHub. These are all custom scripts and spreadsheets and documentation that I've created. You don't necessarily need to use them, but it does make things a little easier when it comes to providing or building all this information for your company. As for Attack Navigator, that's open source, it's free. All you have to do is just look up Attack Navigator and just Google it. It's provided by by MITRE. And I think they may have it on their website somewhere. Resources, yeah, it's on their website, but simplest thing is to just Google it. It's just Attack Navigator.
Thank you. How to search TTPs for manufacturing industries?
That's a great question. Okay, so there are different types of, when it comes to MITRE ATT&CK in the matrices, there's 3 types. You have enterprise, mobile, and ICS. So I'm assuming what you're referring to is ICS, which is industrial control systems. These are the TTPs that MITRE has identified that are used specifically for industry or industrial control systems. So hopefully that provides you with some of that information for what you're looking for. Oh, there it is. You can view on Attack Navigator right there. So I can click this and again, create new layer. More options would be, ICS attack, mobile attack, etc. So yeah, that's a great question. And MITRE provides that information just on their website.
Thank you. Next one. How could IT security professionals implement and use MITRE ATT&CK framework in cybersecurity operations?
There's a couple ways that you can use it. This is one of the ways that I've developed to best action MITRE ATT&CK. Another way that you can do it is, a lot of SIMs will tag their alerts with MITRE ATT&CK technique numbers, T1659 or whatever it is. And if that's the case, you can go and investigate that specific TTP and maybe find out more about it. You can look at mitigations or detections for it, but it can provide some information. MITRE ATT&CK really is a resource that you can use in a multitude of different ways. And most importantly, it provides kind of common language for anybody in the industry to be able to have a conversation about what exactly it is they're seeing. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. It's difficult to say specifically how you could use it. I showed one of them, and then using your SIM, that's another one. There are specific controls too. MITRE has some more resources that talk about specific query language that you can use to kind of search for these specific TTPs as well within your SIM.
Thank you. What are the newest trends in threat intelligence?
Interesting question. I would say one that is, as far as trends, like maybe what people are offering, a lot of companies and for Intel providers are offering AI integration. for automated reporting, or just asking questions or helping sift through data. That's something that I've seen a lot of software offer. A recent concern is AI, from threat intelligence or deep fakes. Those are some other ones. Those things are making, I know that it's on executives' radars. It's something that they sometimes are concerned about, is the use of either of those things. And there's a lot of potential threats that exist with those things being created. I know that malware scripting is somewhat easier if you have AI that's able to write half of it for you. The barrier to entrance becomes lower. You don't have to be the most amazing coder. If you know a couple ways to exploit something, you can have potentially AI write the rest of it for you. So.
Thank you. The next one, from a MITRE ATT&CK dashboard, is it possible to export the results in a usable document for an executive like the CISO or the CIO to let them understand what the risks are?
Yeah. So if you go to Attack Navigator, if you want to, you can export this. You can have it as this page, right? But you can go to Layer Controls and hit Export, and you can export it as an SVG. And so that just exports it as a picture. And it has a little legend here to kind of show you like approximately what the score is. So that might be a way that you can display this to your leadership. It doesn't have all of the information necessarily that having something right here, being able to click on it and see this is a score of 32, but showing it as an SVG, I have done that in the past just for presentation purposes.
Okay, so we will go with the last question for the day. How would you use MITRE for small and medium businesses?
My best advice is to do this, to create a heat map. Like I said, a lot of SIMs will tag their alerts with MITRE TTPs. And so if you can export that information into a CSV, then you can upload it into Attack Navigator. And you might be able to pull some scoring from that, in a sense that if you're seeing this TTP used often that's being pulled from your SIM, you could create a heat map using that. But a lot of this information is also freely available. So say you don't have Mandiant or Anomaly or CrowdStrike or whatever, because you're a smaller business and it's just too expensive. MITRE has the information for those threat actors for free to a certain extent. And so, like I showed earlier in the presentation, if you're concerned, if you believe that APT29 is the threat actor that is targeting your industry, you have concerns about that one, here's some TTP information about APT29. And if you click the view button on here, it will take you to MITRE's information about APT29. Again, this is all free information. There's so many groups that they have documented because their thought process is that the more intel that is shared in this way, the better all of our security posture can be against the bad guys. And so there's a whole host of information that MITRE provides on any of these threat actors. And so I think that the best way to use MITRE for a small or medium business is to just use their information that's free. That's one of the challenges of small and medium businesses is like resources and funding for things. And so maybe you don't have the big fancy intel provider that some other places do, but there are free resources out there. This is, MITRE's information is free, Attack Navigator is free. So, and all of this on my GitHub is free as well. So hopefully that can provide you with something to help small to medium businesses.
Thank you to our wonderful speaker, Mark, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and the knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we're looking for more and more sessions with you, Mark.